You're from the future? It sounds like you want to doubt me, but can't. Well, it is the only way to explain that paper being set today. And we've been traveling across dimensions and investigating hearts, bodies, and souls, so traveling through time, while a bit extravagant, isn't too far out there. But you still don't fully believe me. That's fair, given that I haven't given you much reason to trust me since we've met. So, I'll explain the reason I, or rather you, went back in time. Do you remember when you first met Computer and he talked about the Brightside simulation he made to recreate all of the dimensions? Well, his plan of putting everyone there is true. However, he wants to roll over the multiverse with an iron fist. By sticking everyone into the simulation, he'll be able to control everyone. What they say, think, feel, heck, if you can express it in any way, he can control it. But what about the thing that's destroying dimensions? Computer wouldn't be able to fight against that if it caught up to him. That's what I thought too. However, that thing, the life virtualization system, was all his fault for getting unleashed. Hercules, a Disney movie about a baby boy that gets kidnapped from the Greek gods by Hades in a failed attempt to have him... Okay, I'm gonna play it safe with YouTube here and just say, put to sleep, resulting in his upbringing being centered on becoming a true hero. In general, it's a very fun Disney movie for me, though I still definitely wouldn't put it anywhere near my top 10 favorite Disney movies. But it most definitely seems to have become a favorite because it is in almost every single Kingdom Hearts game. Seriously, there is only one game where this movie is not a world. Maybe two, but that game is still updating, so who knows. Given that this is based on Greek mythology, there are a lot of versions of the Hercules story, but not that many video games. Heck, as far as the Disney versions games go, the only ones to make any note of are an animated storybook in a print studio that was alongside other Disney movies. If you're looking for something that I would end up reviewing, there's just a single PS1 game. I guess all of the Cage representation is to make up for that. It also kinda has two different titles, because a year after this game's initial release, E for Everyone replaced K through A, Kids through Adults, resulting in a re-release and the subtitle being dropped for some reason. But today, I'll be going over Disney's Hercules Action Game to see why there aren't many other Hercules games. The story retells the events from the movie, or really only the adult Hercules part and onward. Nothing involving Herc's upbringing is mentioned, meaning that the initial sleep attempt, Herc getting bullied for being so strong, and the whole reason Phil is training Herc aren't stated, like even remotely, which is actually pretty surprising since I feel that it still would have fit for the game for a level or two. The story that is shown off in the game is actually about the same length as the movie. You still get the general gist of the movie even without some extra stuff that the film has. The only criticism past that is that Herc's struggle of learning what it means to be a true hero never really happens. That's pretty much because the scene where he's talking to his father about becoming famous isn't shown. But in terms of abridging stories, this is pretty good all things considered. Also, there's more of an emphasis on fighting Steno, this lady from the movie who was defeated in like 1 second. And no, that's not Medusa. I thought that too until looking further into this. She is Medusa's older sister though, so there's that. Didn't even know Medusa had siblings before this. Movie clips are used for cutscenes of this game, and they are very clearly not too high in quality. Like, remember back in my Tarzan review when I said that I was surprised the cutscenes looked good there, and I expected worse? This is what I was expecting. Granted, that game came out 2 years after this one, but still, the amount of pixelation is... At the same time, this kinda gives the feeling of VHS tapes, so if you imagine it that way, it can feel more nostalgic, but for anyone else, that won't be the case. The sound is good for this though, so I won't rag on that at least. In-game, however, is a different story. I really like the pixel art style here. Again, I'm always one to give credit to pixel work, and my goodness, it is very pleasing to the eye. This is especially true with the environments. There's a lot of color to them, and some levels feel like they have a central focus on one color, like in Cyclops Attack, having a lot of reddish brown, and the Big Olive having mostly bright grays. It makes levels feel distinct aside from its level design. I want to point out that I'm playing the Steam version, and I'm not sure if that matters too much, but it does seem that graphically the original version is a little bit better when it comes to characters. I don't know, maybe it's because I didn't play it in full screen mode, and apparently that's how the game is intended to be played, but I thought I would bring it up just in case. The music is also a little weird in the Steam version too. When a song ends, it starts playing and then plays again. Again, not sure if not playing in full screen did something for whatever reason. Despite that technical hiccup, the music is fantastic. Most, if not all of the music, is a collection of instrumental renditions of songs from the movie, so if you like the movie soundtrack, you'll like the game's soundtrack. I love it anytime something like this is done. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen very often, but I guess that makes me appreciate it when it does happen even more. Another amazing aspect is that almost every character has their original voice actors. Literally, the only one that is different is Terpsichore, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right, the Muse of Dance, who even then is voiced by the history muse Cleo, and you are really not going to notice that they are different people, since all of the muses sing together anyways. Seriously, for its time and even with current times, that is really good for voice acting. There are two major gameplay types in the game, and in most of them your goal is to get to the end of the level. First off, there's the 2D type, where Herc uses his immense physical strength through punches, a ground pound, and being able to pick up and throw heavy objects. In addition to these, he has an uppercut he can wind up, which is used for breaking giant rocks and barriers. Hercules also has a sword for defeating enemies. Throughout these levels, gifts of the gods, that being a very fancy phrase for power-ups, can be obtained, switched between, and used for defeating enemies. These include an electric sword which shoots a lightning beam, a fire sword that shoots out a fireball, a sonic sword, not that one, able to send out sound waves around Hercules, and a helmet that grants invincibility as long as it is worn. These all run on a limited supply, but you can always pick up more to fill up that pickup's available amount. The other style is the rush mode, where Hercules constantly runs forward without stopping, however you are able to control how fast or slow you go. You aren't able to fight anything during these, so bumping into stuff will cause you to lose health. However, you can run into Hermes' sandals, giving Herc a burst of speed that can ram through some objects. There's also one level on top of Pegasus, which is pretty much a mix between both of these types, but there's no sandals, you can't control how fast you go, and there's no punches or ground pound available. Aside from the gifts of the gods, there are other collectibles found in levels. The items that help you out during a level are small vases that give extra lives, Hercules bottles that give back health, and Hercules action figures which increases your maximum health. The items that are tallied up after completing a level are silver and gold coins which boost your rating for that level, Hercules letters which give an extra life after collecting all of the letters, and 4 large vases which give a password for a level once you collect them all. That way you can jump forward to that specific level. Hercules' own strength during the 2D levels is used pretty often for getting through them. Every move has its use and chance to shine, so it doesn't feel like any of his mechanics are forgotten while playing through the game. That's something I very much appreciate given how small this game is. And while Hercules on his own is strong, most of the power-ups are very useful as well. The electric and fire swords are very good for taking out enemies from a distance and do wonders for the Pegasus level. Seriously, in my opinion, that's the hardest level in the game. Surprisingly, there's no shield, but I suppose the helmet makes up for that since you're not able to be hit, but can still attack while using it. You also tend to try and preserve these power-ups if you can because they are limited. Rather than waste them immediately, you try to fight some enemies normally, while running the risk of taking damage. Do wish I could carry objects over between levels though. This also makes most of the bosses fun. Each of them have a different way of taking them on, but some of them needing you to be pretty mindful of a fair amount of things at once, so it doesn't feel too overbearing or unfair with not knowing how to beat the boss. Aside from the Minotaur, it was the only boss I got a game over for, and the way of beating him is really dumb to me. On top of that, exploring can be fun. Collecting the coins and finding the letters by going up and down the different lanes is satisfying. That might sound kinda weird, but that could just be the completionist in me. Though the rush levels don't have this stuff, they are still cool to go through, especially if you can keep up a high speed. This is a small game, but the mechanics all around are wound tight, leaving for not too many frustrating moments. And that's actually pretty good considering some of the most recent games I've played. Enemies appear from off screen and they are quite fast. Most of the time you won't see it coming, and unfortunately the dynamic scenery of some levels actually ends up being a double-edged sword. While it helps breathe life into levels with exploration, it ends up making fights against generic mobs less tolerable. Scenery can block enemies from view, giving enemies an even bigger advantage against you than just being off screen. And in addition to that, enemies can track you between multiple lanes, so running away isn't a very strong option. The birds in particular make this extremely apparent without power-ups. Enemies being able to do this, while more than likely unintentional, comes off as a cheap way to increase difficulty. Speaking of which, one aspect of gameplay I haven't mentioned yet is the fact that there are 3 difficulties: beginner, medium, and Herculean, basically the hard mode. Now, I played on medium, and I'm assuming you start the game on medium anyways, because the only reason I even knew there were multiple difficulties was because I got a game over due to the Minotaur boss, and the manual has the passwords for the 2nd and 3rd levels, with each difficulty having its own password. I'm assuming the major difference between all 3 of them is how much damage you take, but that doesn't matter much. The real reason I'm pointing this out is because on beginner, you don't have access to every level in the game. You can only go up to when you save Zeus, whereas for medium and higher, you run through the passageways of Eternal Torment and then beat Hades. Kinda weird for beginner to not have you beating Hades, because it's kind of a feeling of, we did it, we saved the day, but the whole city is still destroyed, so it's just a little bit awkward, but I guess it's also supposed to reward you for being on a higher difficulty with more levels. Which, to be fair, isn't the most out there thing, but I don't think any other license-based game I've ever reviewed has done that. I'm not too sure if people have really noticed what I'm about to say, and that especially won't be the case assuming you didn't see one of my other videos in particular, or have even played the game I'm about to talk about, but a lot of stuff about this game and how I feel about it is extremely similar to the Tarzan PS1 game. Both of them have a small amount of Disney games, but many different versions of the original story. The length of the game is about the same, the difficulty is about the same, it has similar strengths and weaknesses, the gameplay types are very similar, the way music for the games are from the movie is the same, which makes sense given that they were both done by the same composer. Even my thumbnail is practically the same, and that was not done intentionally. These 2 games are the most similar I've ever had on the channel so far, but I'd have to say that I like this game a little better. The power-ups here are better, and the difficulty isn't as bad as Tarzan gets by the end. And I'll give a little bit of a nudge for the story for Hercules as well. This is actually pretty ironic too, because I actually like the Tarzan movie more than the Hercules movie. I find that very funny. The Life Virtualization System, or LVS, was originally a portal that could transfer real-life objects into a digital space. Computer ended up becoming obsessed with the project, and soon enough, his crunching caught up with him. He built himself into a mechanical body that still feeds off of biological energy. In this new form, he made a big error on LVS, which caused the portal to become an unstoppable entity that began to eat away at his universe. Once the LVS finished eating, it hopped to another dimension to eat more and more, and it's continued ever since. But from what he said, the dimensions getting eaten away would fade from existence because their connection to the prime dimension was cut, and if the prime dimension gets eaten, everything will get lost. Wouldn't that go against everything he's done? If anything, the LVS is actually helping him. It isn't even destroying those dimensions. It's sending them directly to the Brightside simulation. The computer hardly has to work on it at all. Luckily, he can't just attack the prime dimension. There's no telling what'll happen if he ever does that. And you saying that means that he doesn't do that in the future. I see you're starting to believe me now. What's going on, my fellow residents? It's me, TheFrozenCavern, and thank you guys for making it to the end of this video. So this Hercules review is actually a pretty big surprise one because I'm back in my college dorm right now, and I bought pretty much everything I needed to record stuff for games, aside from a few HDMI cords that made things a little bit wonky to try and do, but I did have some Steam games to do, and Hercules was really short, so I just figured, why not? Let's just do Hercules. But I am genuinely surprised that I felt so similar in a way to the PS1 Tarzan game that I did. because no other game has been so similar in so many ways, with the end result also being extremely similar. I swear, it's surprising that with this series, I have managed to get every form of feeling under the sun. In terms of Disney movies overall though, Hercules is pretty down the middle. Not too high, not too low. It's not a bad movie, it's just that I like a lot of other Disney movies better, including, again, Tarzan, because that makes everything very much ironic for this. But anyways, if you guys have not already, make sure you go down to the description below because that's where all of my social medias are located. My Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Discord are all there, and there are all ways for you guys to be notified for another video or an update for the channel. And my Patreon is also down there, and if you guys subscribe to that for $1 a month, you guys get to see these videos a week earlier than everyone on YouTube. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more, as well as share this video out with your friends and family. But until the next video, take care.